This video is sponsored by Forge. More on them later. Greetings gamers, my name is Anto, and in today's video I want to talk about some of the newest changes to LegendKeeper for maps and timelines. Originally I was going to film this as two videos. I did film this as two videos, but I don't think that there is enough in either to really warrant two separate videos. So I'm going to fuse them into one and give it to you in one video. So if there's a little jumping around and it's a little confusing like that when we just smash cut from one to the other, that is why. So as is always the case, immediately after I dropped my 2025 overview of LegendKeeper, the new timelines feature dropped, and then just after I dropped my GM Bible video, the new map features dropped. So I thought we needed to make a video where I go over some of these new features, how I use them, and what's cool about them. We're going to dive straight into LegendKeeper here. We are in my Jewel Cities of Talavaar map, and you will have seen this in a bunch of LegendKeeper videos before, but there's been a big overhaul in how maps work, and there's a bunch of layer features now. So the first thing that I want to talk about is core to a lot of these other features and what makes them interesting and work, and that is the unit of measurement tool. So you now have the option to set a specific range on the map and tell the system what that distance is so that it can then measure distances on your map. So as an example, if we scroll in here onto the legend of the Jewel Cities of Talavaar, you can see I have a mile marker, and if we go in and go into our measure distance, and I don't remember how to clear it, but if I click and add it, you can see that I get 125 miles because I've already set this up. But when you first set it up, if we go into a different map, that's probably the easiest thing to do. If we go into the planes of existence, there we go. Measure distance will be the option, and then you click 2 points and that gives you your distance. So once you've got that set up, it's one of the reasons why I like adding a scale bar to my maps. Just for things like this, it makes it really quick and easy to measure that. You then have the option to start adding regions as well as measuring distances. So the first thing that we're going to do is just show off the measure distances. So let's say you want to know how far it is between two cities. If we zoom in here into the Vale, one of the regions of my city, and we want to know how far it is between the city of Malachite and the city of Dream if we were to move via this town of Foxglove. So we click on the first point, and every click will give you a new point, and then you can click Control to snap to existing paths or boundaries, but it gives us 17 miles. And when you set up that distance, you can set it up in meters, in feet, in miles, or kilometers. I would like to see a user enterable option for that though, because I'd really like the option to put days, hours, or weeks, like a unit of time as the measurement, because a lot of the time the players in your campaign won't actually care what the distance is between two places. They care how long it's going to take to get there. So it'd be really nice to be able to set time as the unit of measurement between two places, especially like in a space game. You know, the unit of measurement really is irrelevant when it's that large. You really only care how long it takes to get between places. The next of the new things added to the maps overhaul is regions, and this is something that I've been waiting for a long time. I really love regions on fantasy maps. It's a great way to add visual interest, be able to denote clusters of different nations or like selections of a region that are unified under a common cause. There's a bunch of different things that you can do with regions. I've gone ahead and added regions to the Jewel Cities already, but I've just stuck with the nations to begin with. So if I hover over all of them, you can see that these different colored kind of overlays appear over each of the nations. And this can be clicked on, it can be linked to a existing page, and you can set it to sync with that page. So whereas before I would use a pin to say this is the region of Eildal, now I can set it so I can click anywhere on Eildal and I can get that information to come up. One of the really nice things about this feature is you can set its zoom visibility so that this region is only visible or clickable at a certain zoom level. So I'm going to want to click on the region when I'm at this kind of high macro level, but if I zoom in and I'm all the way in looking at a specific city, I don't want to accidentally click on the region. I just want to be clicking on the pins I've got. So I've got mine set up so that it disappears at 75% zoom level. So as you zoom in, you lose the ability to click on the region, which means that you're not going to accidentally click on it instead of clicking on a pin. Similarly, you have the option to change the color and the fill and change specific colors from an existing palette or choose your own colors. You can change the stroke, so the line around the region. You can change when the label on the color displays, so whether they're on hover of the mouse, always on, never on. You can change the text style, and then you can also edit the points once you've made the region. This is really useful for going in and linking islands to your mainland. So if I go ahead and hover over the Vale here, you can see I've got little lines that connect all of these islands to the mainland because they're all part of the Vale, they're all territories of the Vale. And if we click on that and go ahead and edit the points, you can see that I've dragged them out and kind of covered up these islands using those lines. It does mean that sometimes, depending on the kind of complexity of what you're doing, as you hover over it, if I can get an example to do here, there, if we zoom in, sometimes it does cause a little bit of artifacting as you zoom in at different levels, because there'll be a break in the points, like what looks like a very small break in the points, and then the shader is trying to resolve that. I believe that's what's happening, and it's making these weird lines, but it doesn't always appear. It depends on the zoom level. And I've only noticed it happen when I drag points off to form islands and not just on normal regions. The next thing that you can do with the new map engine in LegendKeeper is you can draw paths. So if I zoom here on the map, you can see I've got an existing water crossing on my map called the Glint Crossing. And I currently represent that with this little icon here to represent the Glint Crossing, and you click it and you get the information about that crossing between the city of Glamour and the city of Pearl. But if you go ahead and click on Draw Path, well, I can click between Pearl and add in those points across the waterway, and then click Enter to finish, and it draws in a path between Pearl and Glamour, which I can then name the Glint Crossing and go ahead and link it to a page and link that to the Glint Crossing, confirm, go ahead and click off it, and then it exists as a clickable path. So instead of having an icon for it, you can have the kind of dashed out lines, or however you choose to style it, because you've got options for color and line style, for label display and text style, all to appear there. So you can change the size and the style of the text as well. So we're going to go ahead and make it serif, set it to our outline color, so that when we hover over it, we can actually see what it is. And one of the really big benefits of that is if you fill your entire map with these crossings, you can then go into the three dots here and enter navigation mode, and you can click 2 points on the map and it will give you a Google Maps style direction of how to get somewhere. So let's say we wanted to go from the town of Blackgrove, which is here, and we wanted to get to the city of Andred, or the town of Andred over in Eildal. We click that there and you can see that it will draw that path on for us. So we head east on the Glint Crossing, and then we continue east along there. And if we'd set up these lines here as paths, it would give us a full Google Maps style navigation to be like, head southeast on this road name, head east across the Glint Crossing, head north up along this, and then south down here. And it gives you the waypoints, it gives you the miles, and it is very Google Maps style. And it's not something that I think you're typically going to use very often. I think that it's not something that is immediately useful to most people, but it is super cool that it exists because, like, as I'm map making, I will usually put paths in. So over time, I can start adding those paths to the functionality of LegendKeeper. And then when players in the campaign in the future or future campaigns say, right, let's travel from point A to B, I can just do that and be like, cool, here's the length of that journey, and here's all of the settlements that you're going to go through. Before we leave the land of maps and look at the new timeline features in LegendKeeper, I want to talk about today's sponsor, Forge. Forge is a VTT designed specifically for in-person games, and it's got a full toolkit of options, including a map builder, audio management for ambience and sound effects, and a robust note system. It has a ton of tools for making your in-person sessions feel more alive, like animated maps, dynamic lighting, and the ability to import maps from your favorite creators and build on top of them. The app also supports 3D dice rolling and stat blocks for both the 2014 and 2024 versions of D&D. And best of all, it's a one-time purchase that installs locally on your machine, which means that you're not relying on dodgy Wi-Fi to run your sessions. And even if you're not interested in using Forge as a full VTT, you can still use it as a fully featured map maker and export those maps to use in your VTT of choice, or even print them out for use at the table. Forge has just dropped a huge new update with over 2 years worth of features and optimizations, so now's a great time to check it out. And if you're interested, head to the link down in the video description below, because that'll let Forge know that I sent you, and check it out. But for now, back to the video. Okay then, with the map features out of the way, let's jump on over to the timeline feature and check those out. So before the timelines feature was released and became like a core part of LegendKeeper as a whole, the way that I handled timelines in LegendKeeper was using tables. So I had two different approaches. I had the high level world shaping events timeline, which was this table where I'd put the year on the left, the event and any notes about it on the right. And then I had my day-to-day calendar. Now this I still use because I find that this particular workflow suits me better than the day-to-day calendar in the timeline, because there's less barriers to me just making notes. And what this is a day of the year, the moon phase, the weather, the full date, the zodiac sign for my world, and then events. So as I go through, you can see that I make a note for what adventure we are playing through. So whether it's adventure 7, adventure 8, or adventure 9, and I just make bullet notes for what has happened during that session. And it is really useful to do that to get a sense of where the players are in space and time and the progression of events through a campaign. So it makes it really easy to see, right, we've had like 10 adventures back to back across 10 days. It's really time for these players to have like a week or two of downtime. Otherwise, they're going to hit level 20 in like 2 months of game time. And this has been my approach for day-to-day timelines pretty much as long as I've been running D&D, and it's always worked for me. I've made small changes through the years, like adding the moon phases to the table, adding the weather direct to the table, changing it so that I get the full date listed there, so I don't have to piece together the month, day, and the day of the week on the fly, just to make my life easier. But this works for me. But if we jump over to the timeline page and go over to the actual timelines tab, you can see that we have LegendKeeper's inbuilt timeline system. And within LegendKeeper's timeline system, currently there are 3 different views. There is this view, which is my preferred method. This is the list view. There is the Gantt view, which gives you, if we zoom out here, a kind of big condensed look at all of the things that are happening in the timeline, broken down by category, so you can see what events are happening at the same time. So if we zoom in, you can see where the different events are overlapping. And then if we jump into the calendar view, that gives us day-to-day calendar information. This is the LegendKeeper version of that table that I was showing you, where I track my adventures. And in here, you can add events by clicking on add, and it will allow you to create an event, link it to a page. For some people, that works really well for tracking the minute things that have happened. I just personally find it easier to make scratch notes in a table for the session to session things that have been happening, and prefer to use Legend Keeper's built-in timeline for the big headline world shaping events that are going on in my world. So let's run through this and I'll show you broadly how I use it. So the first thing that I want to talk about is groups. So down here at the bottom left of the page, we have a groups button, and you can add as many groups as you want. And I've got a couple different ones here. I've got one for Valen and Talavaar. These are two of the continents in my world, the two continents that my players have been to and campaigned in. So they're the ones that have events tied to them. Then we have a group for Pantheon, so anything relating to the gods gets put into that one. Then world shaping events, so anything that most people in the world will have at least heard about, typically will get bucketed into that group. And then the whispered, this is a separate group of kind of background stuff that's happening in my campaign over the long term, that eventually I'm going to want to be able to look at this and go, hey, here's the reveal, players. Here's how long this has been going on and where all these pieces have been put in place. So looking at the timeline, you can see that each event gives you when it happens in the world. And if we jump up into the top right here, we can click on time system, and that is where you can set your time system within the inbuilt calendar within Legend Keeper. You can choose a default calendar, so Gregorian, a couple of different fantasy ones, or you can make your own. So I have made my own for the world of Istar, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 13 months in a year, 28 days a month, so 364 days a year. That gives us a uniform calendar, so the days always fall on the same day of the week. And you can also name your months, name your weekdays, and set your eras. So I have conveniently 2 eras, before and after Cataclysm. This is one of the world shaping events in my world. You can also set up the number of moons that you have, set up their kind of length of rotation, so where the moon phase would be an offset at, so it sits on the right day, and then also set up how your dates display as well. So I have my calendar set up, so you can see at the start here, we start in 563 BC before Cataclysm, with the Istar family arriving in Valeroth. And that is just an event, it's not linked to anything. So you can add events that are linked to pages, or you can add events that are just static events that aren't linked to anything. If we click on the Red Death here, that is also not linked to anything. But if we click on the Akmiri Cataclysm, that is linked to a specific page for that event. When you're editing the events, if we go ahead and edit the Red Death here, you can change their start date, their end date, and in the style, you can set an image for them. So if your page already has an image associated with it, it will pull that, or you can set an image directly. You can also link it to a page as well. And the way that I use my calendar is I like to track the big things that happen in my world. So if we go down, we see that cataclysms, invasions, the formation of kind of national or global spanning groups or organizations, the creation of species, all of those kind of things get created and placed on my timeline. For a lot of the images for these pages, I made these banners using images from the new D&D Player's Handbook, Monster Manual, and DMG, and I just cropped them to fit this thin banner size, which kind of crops into the timeline perfectly. And as it happens, it makes a really like nice and attractive headline banner in a Legend Keeper page anyway. So that's the format I use for my headline images in Legend Keeper just throughout. So while most of the time I will be in this page, in the list view of the timeline, I will occasionally jump into the Gannet view because it can be really useful to look at the different groups and see where events are happening concurrently. So if we zoom into this area, which is kind of around my present day, we zoom into here, which is during my second campaign with my current group. You can see the Ashka Apocalypse was the main bulk of my second campaign. And you can see that there's the Ashka Apocalypse, which is that main event. And there is also several small events happening within that. So Izanos the Cruel is freed from his prison. That was the event that kicked off the apocalypse. But there's also whispered cultists charging Sunat stones around Azim in Ash. This is something the players interacted with during that campaign, but it didn't become a kind of primary plot point. So eventually, when the whispered plotline comes to the forefront, they'll be able to go, and I lay it all out, kind of Charlie Day, Pepe Sylvia board style. I'll be able to go, oh, remember in that second campaign, multiple campaigns ago, when you met these people outside of this city that were doing this weird stuff with lightning? And they'll go, oh yeah, I remember that. This was part of that. But then you can also see that at the same time this was happening, on the other side of the world, the Timestone War was happening, and that is something that is relevant in my current campaign, so like 2 campaigns removed from these events. And the Gannet view is really useful for contextualizing where events are happening in relation to each other in a way that the list view doesn't really communicate, because it will always stack them on top of each other like that. And there we have it. That is the new maps and the new timeline features within LegendKeeper. I'm really excited for both of these tools and to continue experimenting with them both over the coming weeks and months. If I find new and interesting ways to use these, I'll no doubt talk about them in my world building live streams. So if you're not already subscribed, get subscribed so you can join in the fun on those. If you have any questions about maps or timelines, throw them down in the comments below. But until next time, happy gaming.